Okay, let's not play this and give one last try. Let's try to hold on for a little longer.
Time listening to music and hanging out with us. So today, my team is going to win. That is the recipe usually. So you should be rooting for Team Anna. The column on the left side, that is my... What was that bonus gambit about? But I think Palmaster will flag his opponent.
Oh shoot! It's not increment. Give checks.
No
check,
increment.
check,
No
check, check,
increment. No
check.
increment.
I'm
No
sorry,
increment.
check.
No.
Oh, give him a check. 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 Make it. Ah! Sorry.
It was mating one and flagging and all the things happening at the same time, but
On the bright side, if people are gonna start working from home, we're gonna have more time to train together as a team. We're all gonna have to do some serious training and think about our actions after the stream. You are representing Team Botaslavia. That should already be pressure enough, Julian. But the good kind of pressure. Oh, shh. Yes! He didn't do. Yes. Now fix it, sir. Fix it. We didn't train enough for the 2-move tactics. Now I really like White's position too. Except for this checkmate. Okay, we gotta keep up. Oh, hang on. No. We had a minute? No, a minute and 20 seconds. A minute 20 seconds to 15. We're totally winning. Totally winning. If somebody can clip this, please, I'm going to make a compilation of all of our blunders during sub battles. And I'm going to use it for some propaganda to get the subs to do more tactics. To tie the match. We're down some material here. It's not looking good, but black just took on g3, and we're wondering, should we take with the h-pawn? Should we take with the f-pawn? What do we notice? That rook on f1 is going to cause a discovery attack, ladies and gentlemen. F takes g3, winning the queen. We're feeling better. We're catching up. Maybe if this is like more real-life situations, people are going to be able to relate with it more. I just want to pretend that this is what's actually happening. White to move here. So one thing that is good to do if you're a beginner and you're starting off with tactics is just try to figure out what's going on in the board. You can also try to go through the tactics faster, but you're going to remember it better. So what we notice here is that white has 3 pieces for 3 minor pieces of black, but it looks like we're about to win an extra piece. Whenever you're going to capture something, try to look at the options. We can take with the e-pawn and we can take with the knight here. Right? So there's 2 options to take here. What else do we notice? The rook on a7 is a very strong piece, and it's currently pinning the knight on c7. So when making the choice of what to take with the pawn or the knight, which one do we think is going to put more pressure? Bishop will capture knight. Yeah, the bishop is threatening this. Well, actually, there's another issue. There's bishop d4 check, which I didn't even see, which is why I also have to be training. What are we going to do about bishop d4? I don't know. So we actually have to take care of this. Knight d5, bishop d4, king over, bishop takes. Where's the tactic, chat? There's a fork. Try to find it in that situation and put it in the chat. This is actually a little bit trickier than it needs to be for a 700 rated tactic. Rook takes c7 now. No, actually knight takes works because if bishop check, the king moves over. The bishop cannot leave the long diagonal because then we're going to have knight f6, I believe. So knight f6 is the extra tactic there. That was kind of on Puzzle Rush. It should have been easier. but that's okay. It's good to see that chat is trying here. The knight is under attack on c4. What do we notice? Well, we are currently down a piece. So we have 3 minor pieces for 4 minor pieces for white here. Black is currently down, but the white king is into the center of the board and we definitely have more of an attack going on. So one option is to try to move the knight, maybe something like knight e3. We also have queen g3 as a threat. And whenever you're in a position where you're down material, you're trying to play for tricks because you're very likely to lose. So you might as well make it as hard as possible for your opponent. So queen g3 or knight e3. This is what you have to ask yourself in this situation. I see a lot of people putting the correct answer in chat, so that's great. We're gonna check. The king moves to f1. Doesn't have anywhere to go currently. The knight gives a check. Even though it's blocking the bishop, the only way for white to continue is to sacrifice the queen. If the king would have moved away, we would have had discovery attacks with the knight. And white would end up losing material regardless. Okay, next position here. White to move. We are down a minor piece once again, but what do we notice? We have an attack. The bishop, the rook, both pointing towards the king side. We have a nice checkmate in 1 here. If you're practicing, feel free to pause the stream and ignore the chat and try to find the checkmate in 1 here. So, rook takes h2. The pawn cannot take back because it is pinned and the king has nowhere to go. There we go. It's good to see all this notation in chat. Usually it tilts me, but I realize that this is what we need. This is what we need. When someone took one of your pieces, try to look at all of the options. So all the knights can take it, and I've missed it. Andrea's missed it. All the top players missed it. So actually, yes, people do miss mate in 1s in online chess. So 4 options to take the bishop here. What looks like the best one? Well, this knight is under attack. If we could somehow attack 2 pieces at the same time, that would be fantastic. If we take with the queen, we're attacking the rook and the knight at the same time. So that is clearly the best option here. Black to move. The rook is under attack. Does black have any serious threats? I don't see too many. The queen is in the center of the board and it doesn't look like it has a lot of squares to go to. Is there, you know, some way we could potentially trap this queen? Bishop b7. The queen's got nowhere to go. Great. White to move here. There's a lot going on. The material is almost even. White is up 2 pawns. So this is a position where you're already winning. You're playing board 5. Maybe we lost the first match in the sub battle. And you're feeling confident because, hey, I'm about to get this win. I'm up material. I'm up on the board. Not taking Team Anna seriously. No, you finish it off. You finish it off. White to move. What do we see here? Well, there's a knight under attack and there's a bishop under attack. Do you take on c8 and give Team Anna chances? No, you take on a6 and you get the full piece. Fantastic. More notation in the chat. That is what I like to see. That is what I like to see. White to move. King is looking really vulnerable right now. The king is looking how I'm feeling after these continued beatings on Sundays. So we need to figure out a way to punish this king. We got some checks here. We got rook e8 and we got queen g6. Whenever a king is very wide, open, and vulnerable, try to find both checks. Especially if you're pretty new, just to see both and then look first at the one that is more tempting. Queen g6 looks a lot more scary. If king f8, we have rook e8 check. If king goes to g8, we have rook e8 as well. But what are we going to do if he blocks? Well, luckily, rook e8 works no matter what. So here we go. This is a mate. Yeah, chat would play h takes g5 here. I've seen this so many times. Try to find out why h takes g5 is wrong. Why is this a move that would make your captain scream if she saw it on Sub Sunday? Why would this give me a heart attack? Well, we got queen h7. We got queen h7, so we cannot take here. But we do want to get rid of this knight. So is there another piece that could take it? Bishop takes, and then we take back with the queen. We save everything, and the situation is looking good. All right, another typical Sub Sunday position. There have been 5 blunders. We've gotten to this point. I probably thought it was lost, but all of a sudden, there's opportunity for the comeback. We have a mate in 2. We have a mate in 2. Is hanging rooks gonna see the mating too? Hanging rooks, I don't know if you're still around. If you are still around, I expect you to be commenting in the chat. Get those points for future sub Sundays. Queen G5. The king is open. We're bringing in the heavies. We have less pieces, so we have to use them in a better fashion. The king goes to G2. No squares there. Queen G2. The knight and the queen. What a beautiful combination. Black to move. Let's look at the situation. It's equal material. So this looks like a very interesting game, but there is a tactic. What do we notice? Well, there's 2 rooks on the D file. We like doubling these 2 rooks. We're pointing towards the D1 square. So we got D1, and it looks like there might be a discovery attack. And some people would say, oh, that's fine. Let's just trade. Let's play knight C6. To you, I would say you're a double agent. Go back to Team Anna. What do you actually want to try to play here? Knight F3. Exactly. We need to do a forcing move. Knight F3. We are giving the king a check. And what now? Well, that rook on D1 is feeling very exposed. We're going to take all of these. We're going to take all of the pieces. Yes. That's how it's done. I realize that I don't need to just tell you what is right to do in these positions. I need to highlight possible mistakes that we've seen subs falling into. We got to learn from our mistakes. We got to know our mistakes. We got to look at our weaknesses, correct those in here, and find the right one on the board. Okay. Moving on. Black to move. This rook is pinned. This rook is pinned. Do we want to take the rook? I would have seen this. This is a very common mistake. We get excited. We get, hey, free rook. I'm going to take it. Look at me go. Material. I feel fantastic about my chess. No. You find a good move. You look for a better. We're not going to take on E3. We're going to play E1 queen. And white can't take the queen because we're pinned. We are pinned. Actually, these are pretty good to show what the wrong moves are here. White to move here. The tactics are getting a little tricky. We're getting into 1300 territory here. And this is an endgame where we have 2 pawns versus 3, but the king is more useful on our pawns than on black's pawns. And we have 2 options here. We have king G6 and we have F6. Which is the possible move and why is the other one wrong? Okay, I see a lot of chat putting in the move correctly, which is making me feel a little bit better about our chances in the future. Yeah, king G6 is the correct reason. But why is king G6 better than F6? Well, if we play F6 and black pushes either pawn and we get king G6, then the position is the same and both moves are fine. But if we play F6, black can play king F7. And if we don't get the king to G6, we're never going to be able to check. And we're not going to be able to promote, to threaten checkmate. So king G6, F6, F7 is actually mate. And it's going to take black 2 moves to promote. So by the time black promotes, we get checkmate. Here we go. There's a checkmate. What is going on in the situation here? Okay, equal material once again. It looks like a very even game. This is a game that most people can get, and their opponent just played a quick c4. Why is c4 a mistake? Honestly, one of our subs could have made the move c4. They probably saw, hey, my pawn is under attack on c3. I'm going to make a quick move. I'm going to move it forward to c4. That's an issue because now the queen that was attacking the pawn is also attacking the knight on d2. Looks like it might be a mistake. The knight is defended twice, it's attacked twice. What else is the issue? We saw this tactic earlier. We have 2 rooks on the open file. They're looking towards the e1 rook. Right now, the e1 rook is defended by the knight, but what if somehow we could remove that knight from f3? Knight takes d2, very good chat. I see you typing, I see you getting your points for sub Sunday. Okay, our turn here. Now, once again, some people would be very excited and very eager to just grab stuff in this situation, maybe take on e7. We have a better move here. We have a better move. We don't want to leave our knight hanging on d2. We don't want to leave it. The poor guy's protected once, he's attacked twice. You guys are good at quick maths. I mean, you're watching a chess Twitch chat, so I think we could do this one. We have to take with check first on f3. King takes back, and then rook takes on e7, ladies and gentlemen. Black to move here. Piece material looks equal. Position looks equal. What is under attack right now? Our bishop on e4. What do we notice? Well, this knight is on f3 and the bishop is on d3 and there's a pawn on e5. This is a very common pattern for a move like e4. If our knight wasn't there, then we would play e4 right away. We're attacking 2 minor pieces at the same time, and that means white can't protect both of them. So how do we get rid of this piece? Yes, Feral. Knight takes c3. Feral Hell is training in the chat. Feral Hell, I think you're about 1200, so this is a tactic that you might actually see in a lot of your games. So very nicely done. Knight takes c3. I'm happy to see it. Feral Hell put a question mark because he's probably afraid that I'm going to get upset. I'm not going to get upset at you guys for training. I'll get upset maybe if we're failing when it actually counts, but in training, he's here, he's trying, it's okay to get answers wrong. So we're going to take and we're going to push e4, and we're going to grab the knight. Black to move here. This looks like a very tricky situation for black. We're up in exchange, but white has an extra pawn, so we're up the material worth of a pawn here. But it appears we have a tactic. So when you have a pawn and a rook versus a bishop and a king, and they're this close together, well, maybe your pawn can help pry that king away from defending the bishop on c2. If we could somehow win the bishop for free, then this is a big win for the black king. a4 check. Very good, chat. a4, pushing the king away. But hey, white is tricky as well. He's not just going to take on a4. He's not going to take on a4. Maybe we would have seen that at board 4, but at board 3, no. We see king b2. The subs are getting trickier. They're getting stronger. They've been through the training. So how do we continue this plan? a3. Great. And I mean, the computer decided to take on a3 and drop the bishop. But if the white king would have played b3 and our pawn is on a3, we would have continued pushing with a2. So the point is that white is going to have to eventually take on a1, or we're going to queen. So we're still getting the bishop here. Still getting the bishop here. Very nice. So let's grab it. Black to move. Equal material once again, and black is the one with an attack. So this is a pretty common position for when you've been the one successfully attacking your opponent and you have a good position, but now you have to finish it off, and finishing it off isn't so obvious. So knight takes f3 looks tempting, and I see a lot of quick fingers to say knight takes f3. But the issue with knight takes f3 is knight takes f3 back. So we do have to be careful about taking right away. That knight is protecting this, and this is a very common blunder. We get excited, we play it. So how do we... Oh, shoot! I was trying to explain why it's rook takes g2. Ah! Okay. Okay. That's fine. Mouse slips happen. We don't have training for the mouse slips yet. Yes, I know it was check. I was trying to explain why it wasn't knight takes f3. The move was rook takes g2, knight takes g2, and then we take on f3. Look, if you mouse slip, I'll forgive it. Mouse slip in a tactic is a little embarrassing. We're down a full rook here, so basically if white doesn't find the tactic, we are lost. What is white's only trump in this situation? The fact that we have some semblance of an attack. Black king is on g8. Doesn't have a whole ton of squares to go. Can't go to f8, can't go to g7, can only go to h8. Is there some way we can attack the g8 square and the h8 square? Yes, there is. Queen a8, check. Black has to block with the bishop. If he would have blocked with the bishop on f8, we would have taken. So now what do we do? Because what do we notice? Well, this queen is protecting the bishop on e8. We have to now use some of our other pieces on the board. We don't just continue. We don't get excited and just sack the bishop because there's nothing to do. There's the bishop on b3, and we have some discovery attacks here. So what is the best discovery attack here? It is bishop f4. Question, chat. We're going to make this a little harder. Why not knight f8? Doesn't it also check the king and attack the queen? Why doesn't knight f8 work? I'm going to right click it. Why doesn't knight f8 work instead of knight f4? The king will just capture it. Exactly. So don't make this slip. The king is going to move out of check and he's going to take. We have to play knight on f4. And now we take the knight. Good. We're trading. It's getting better. White to move here. We just saw black move his knight back to b6 to defend the rook. So one option we have is to eliminate the defender. These are very common tactics. We have rook takes b6. If black takes, then we are going to take. But But if we take the knight, what happens after queen c1? What happens after queen c1? King g2 and rook a2. We start getting into some complications. This is not totally winning. So this is actually an issue. It's not checkmate. We can run away, but it would be very tempting to just take here first. So what you have to do in situations like this, even if a move looks really obvious, there's so few tactics to calculate that you have to look at them both. Queen takes e8 versus rook takes b6. So we're going to play queen takes a8. The knight is forced to take back. Whenever it's a more forcing variation, you always want to go for it. And now we get rook b8 and we take the queen back. Cool. White to move here. We're down a bishop again. Getting flashbacks to all of the pieces that have been sacrificed in the sub battles. And I really want those piece sacrifices to not have gone to waste. I want those pieces to have lost their lives for a reason, not for us to go 5-10 in the sub battles. They lost their lives so that we would train, it would motivate us to become stronger, and we would eventually win the sub battles by the end of 2020. So a lot of people are suggesting moves here, and what I like is that chat is looking at all the suggestions. So we want to look at checks. When we're down a piece and the king is vulnerable, look at checks. There's two main checks to calculate here. We have queen f7 and rook d7. So if we play rook d7 and the king moves back anywhere, we're going to checkmate. If we play rook d7, bishop takes, rook takes, then black can block and trade off everything, and we're going to have a queen versus a rook. So this is still a winning position, queen versus a rook. But if you have time, look for something better. If you were to have like 10 seconds on the clock, if you're in bullet and you don't have increment, and your opponent is also don't sit here and start calculating all of it. That's the only situation where I'd say if you find a pretty good variation, just go for it so you don't flag. But since we have time, we're gonna look. Queen f7 and king h8. Is there any better move here? No, there's not an immediate win. We could take the rook, actually. We could actually take the rook here and then queen takes and then play rook d8. But the issue with that is queen takes, rook takes, then we have a rook versus a rook and a bishop. So that's not as good as the other option. So we're going to play rook d7, take, and we're just going to be happy to be a queen versus a rook. Cool. Down a bishop for a pawn. King doesn't have a lot of space here. What do? We start looking at the checks. The most obvious check is rook h1. We also know queen c2 is an option, but let's dig deeper into the more obvious check. So rook h1. This is one we want to look at because there's only two options and it's easy to calculate variations when there are not a lot of options. So let's start with rook h1, bishop h6. Well, then our queen gets in on f7 and it looks like it's going to be checkmate. Okay, rook h1 and king g6. How do we go on from here? Probably queen e6. The king can only go to g5 and then we have checkmate on f5. So pretty straightforward way to win this one. Okay, I actually didn't give the hardest option here. We can block with the bishop as well. All right, so how do we continue here? Say you missed it and you saw the first part of it. Well, treat it still as a tactic. Queen f5 and rook h7 looks pretty intimidating here. I don't see anything scarier. So I'm gonna play queen f5 and then queen h7, and it was leading to checkmate since we had queen check and then depending on where the king moved, mate on the 7th rank. White to move. Somehow we have all the tempos in the world. This looks like a game between two 800s. And you do see this sometimes with people who are not familiar with openings. So white to move, black's pieces are all trapped here. So what are the kinds of moves we look at? Well, bishop f7 is somewhat tempting. We're gonna have to look at it. Knight g5 also tempting to put pressure on that pawn. Which one do we want to go to first? Well, bishop f7 looks really forcing, so let's look at it. King takes, then we have knight g5. Knight g5 and the king can move backwards, can go to f6, can go to g6. It's actually a little bit complicated here. So we're still going to calculate it because knight g5 can be almost immediately beat by something like e6. So it's not that scary of a move. You know this motive from the Yugoslav attack. That's great. Yeah, so king here, knight here, king takes knight here. If the king comes back, we're going to play knight e6. The queen is trapped, so sometimes we're going for checkmate, but we should also look at just being able to win free material. If we take king takes and we check and the king goes to f6 or to g6 to try to protect the knight, then we're going to come in with the queen and we have a good attack. That's basically all the calculation you would have had to do to feel comfortable with taking on f7 here. You don't have to see all the way. I mean, if the king is that exposed and has no pieces developed around and you see you can bring your queen, you're very likely to get compensation, especially in a blitz match. Black to move. All right. What is going on with the piece count here? We are down a full rook. So that feels pretty bad. And our king is about to get checkmated. So this is really go time. And we do have a checkmating motive here. What do we notice? The king wants to get to d2. Is there any way to check the king on e1 and also take advantage of the square on d2? Well, there is, and it's going to be with a piece that moves diagonally. So we're going to play queen b4, queen takes, we take back, rook d2. All right, well, now the king has nowhere to go. Is there somehow we can check the king? There is. Rook g1. Two options here. Queen takes and rook g3. Queen takes is probably just a Botez gambit. Takes, and I don't see the compensation. Rook g3 is putting pressure on the g5 pawn. But black can try defending with a move like h6. So is there something better? There is. There is something better. This one's a little bit sneakier. This is a sneakier move. So now we're getting into the harder tactic territory. Rook f5. Rook f5 looks like a pretty good option here. What do we like about this? It cuts off the queen from defending the g-pawn. Let's imagine for a second that the queen was off the board here. I'm so nice. I'm even moving it off for you. Try to find the checkmate in 2 puzzle. So with a lot of complex puzzles, what you have to do is just break them down and keep simplifying them. So here's the way of doing that. Now we're threatening queen takes g5 and checkmate if the queen wasn't protecting. So how can we cut the queen off from protecting the g5 square? Well, we can make a move like rook f5. Rook f5 and queen takes. So black just has to give up a free queen. We're on board 2 tactics now. Yeah, we're moving up. We're moving up the ranks in the tactics here. And you know something? Sorry. Okay, so white to move here. This is a position that is very tricky. It would be hard to hold for a draw. Maybe we can move something like knight e3. I'm just saying if there wasn't a puzzle here. Knight e3, we're holding on to the pawn and very tricky ending. Technically, we're equal material. But I think it's always harder in endgames to deal with a queen and a king versus a rook and a knight, just because the queen has so many double attack tactics. So white to move here. Is there something we can do? Well, let's take a look at the checks. So there's no trick with rook g3, forking the king and the queen. There's nothing there. Is rook f6 an option? Maybe rook f8 trying to go for rook g8. Well, the move that we should calculate immediately is rook f6 because it's the most forcing, and we know right away that if the queen takes the rook and we take back with the knight, king takes, we're going to win the endgame because we have 3 pawns versus 2, and that's enough to convert a win here. So rook f6. Let's say the king moves away. Where are the options? There's king g7 and there's king h5. Okay. Let's see. What do we do after king h5? This one feels a little bit trickier. Oh, wow, that's really nice. Okay, now the tactics are getting hard. We play rook f5 because queen takes and we have g4. And no matter if black takes with the king or with the queen, we're gonna get either knight f6 or knight e3 fork. So definitely getting a little trickier here. What? Wow, it was so tricky that I missed it. I clearly didn't calculate all the way. And the issue with that was that I didn't calculate king g7. Maybe that was just the option. So you know what? Sometimes the tactics get hard. No, I didn't look at it, Nelson Moore. So All the minor pieces are in the center of the board here. White to move. F4 looks really tempting. But then we do have to calculate some stuff like bishop g4. So let's look at options here since it's not obvious. This is one to consider. There's also bishop f4. Check here doesn't seem to do much. Check here doesn't seem to do much. But still, there are moves that we should look at. So let's see. f4 and then f5 is probably the best threat in this position. So if we play f4 and the knight moves away, then we're just going to push f5. What if we move f4 and bishop g4 attacking our queen? Well, then we take the knight with check. So I think this is what we're going to go for. f4, okay, and now f5. Should we take on e6 here? Yeah, let's take on e6. Great. Okay, white to move here. There's a knight hanging, but the trick is if bishop takes... Actually, I'm not going to tell you what the trick is. Try to figure out what black is going to do after bishop takes c4. Queen b5. Good. I see some people typing. Yeah, so we're going to check the king, and we're also going to take the bishop on c4. So is there some way that we can prepare taking the knight, but also protect the piece that is going to capture it with? Are we going to do dual commentary in the battle? We're not going to commentate together, Mega. We're going to commentate separately, as we usually do. Yep, queen b5. Nice. So we're checking and we're attacking the queen. And actually, this is a really good tactic because you're often eager to take a free piece. So I'm just going to take a second before I play it because it's going to move on to the next tactic. If your opponent is leaving a piece dangling like that, just take an extra second to see if it's actually a free piece and if you have a better move to do. If you have the time, of course. So let's take. Okay. Rook takes e3. We are down so many pieces here. This is an awful position. We're down a bishop, a queen, and 2 pawns. So one option would be to just try to find some type of perpetual. If you could save a position like this and get a draw instead of a loss, that's a huge win. That's a huge win. So rook takes h2 and rook takes h2 are, sorry, rook 5 takes h2 and rook b takes h2 are the two main options here. So you have to find which one's better. And actually you have a checkmate here, so you don't even have to go for a draw. Rook takes h2, king g1. You can only keep perpetual because the king can keep running away. But if you take with the b rook, king g1, rook h1, and then you have checkmate. Okay, we are getting word from House of Bra that the viewers are down. We are up in exchange, but we can still be doing better. The rooks are both on the open file. Are there any tactics that we can create here? I'm gonna order food so that I could have a longer stream today and not go get it, and then we're gonna continue on the tactics. Besides, a non-hangry Alexandra is gonna be a lot nicer. But maybe that's not what we need. Maybe we should keep hangry Alexandra. Nezodam, thank you for gifting 3 subs. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Okay, hang on. Thank you so much. I'm gonna get some Thai food. Lemongrass tofu Thai mint salad. That sounds fantastic. And maybe papaya salad too. We're just gonna get multiple salads here. I gotta keep up the vitamins as this virus is coming around. Okay, 1 second, chat. We're coming right back after. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just order salad. Okay. All right, we're done. We're back to it. At least it'll be there at some point. Okay. The more hangry, the more Botez gambits. No, okay. I think we should have found it by now. So bishop takes f6. Definitely move we're considering here. Bishop takes back. We have some checks. Rook takes, and then we have rook e7, which is looking for a mate with either queen takes or rook takes. So what are the overall themes in this tactic? Because if we just look at moves, we're not really going to remember it. It seems like our rooks are super active. We wish we could get our rook to d7 or to e8, but we can't do that because the knight on e6 is protecting both. And g5 is about to happen, and we're going to have to retreat our bishop to f2. So this knight is actually doing a fantastic job defending the king. So if we can remove a piece like this, then that is great. Bishop takes f6, and someone's asking, what if king h7? Well, Pichu, that's a fair question. But if the king just moves away and we get a full piece, then we're happy. Let us know when it arrives. I will. It's gonna arrive in about 30 minutes to 50 because it's random. And I'm gonna get some salad when it does. Really forcing myself on the vitamins because I get sick so easily all the time lately for some reason. So bishop takes, we're gonna get rid of this. Now rook e8 looks tempting, rook d7 looks tempting. Which one is better first? Well, if we play rook e8, the king can also move to h7 actually. But then I think rook d7 is winning because we're threatening checkmate and the queen. So rook e8 looks like a better move because if we play rook d7, we're not actually attacking anything. If we could play rook d7 and have a queen on e8, we're winning. So that's why we play rook e8 first. The king just moves away. That makes sense. This is an even better suggestion than I came with. And here is like a one move tactic. Queen is protecting this rook. We don't take it right away because we are up material, but we want to play accurately. So how do we get this queen away from protecting the rook on b8? Rook d7. Yep, perfect. Okay. White to move here. We are down a queen for a bishop. What makes me excited here, if I would have been watching this in one of the sub battles, is it seems like we have chances for perpetual. Whenever you're down so much material like this, you should prioritize some type of plan. If your opponent king is exposed, that gives you chances for a perpetual. So repeating the position. You should be really happy to get a draw here. So we have some options. We have queen takes g7 and we have queen c7. By the way, this tactic is already over 2,000 strength, so it's already expert strength. They're getting a little bit harder, so this one might be more complicated. I think the main theme in this tactic is figuring out the difference between c7 and g7. Intuitively, queen c7 feels like it gives the king less space without even calculating because we're forcing it towards the side of the board where its pawns are blocking its movement. So queen c7 looks like the one I would consider first. And now we got some options. We got king e8, king f8, and king f6. If we play king e8 or king f6 after, we could just repeat. So the move we actually want to calculate is what happens after king f6. Does the king escape from here? Well, let's take a look. Say we play queen d8. Then the king's got two squares. Again, if the king comes to f7, we're just going to play queen d7. So the square the king actually wants to test is king g6. And we're going to play queen e8. I guess another way of trying to see if these work is trying to figure out the position where the king needs to get out of checks. And that square is h6. So here's an alternative way of thinking about it. If we check here, the king is going to keep running. What are some squares the king can get to? It can get to h6. If it gets to h6, our queen either needs to be able to check on f4, which seems unlikely. And even then, we'd be out of checks. Or the queen needs to be in a position where we're threatening checkmate. So king c7, king f6. And how do we continue here? If the queen gets to e8 when the king is on h6, can we save it by a move like queen e7 threatening checkmate? I don't think so, because we're going to get queen c1 defending. So there's gotta... This is a tricky position. So we got 4 minor pieces, but only 1 rook. So it makes it seem like we're down in exchange. And we're more than just down in exchange because we're also down 2 pawns. So probably down like 4 points here. black to move. Our king is in the center of the board. I'm hoping there's some type of tactic here. One that pops out immediately is something like knight f2. I don't think we're going to be able to checkmate because the only pieces close to the king right now are the 2 knights and the rook. So it's probably a situation where we're just trying to win some material. Yeah, knight f2 comes out right away. And then there's discovery attacks with the knight. I don't know. I think we should just take the queen here. And if I missed it, we'll just get ready for sub battles after. Okay, and we take, and I'm just not very afraid of this as a discovery attack. That was the solution. Okay, we're over 2200 level tactics now. That's funny, drunk. Rook takes g6 looks tempting because it's a free pawn. Black cannot take here. What if you play king f8? Then you can play rook g8. And then the king tries to run away. And then it's gonna be mate. Okay. Oh, we're in check. Holy smokes. Okay. Team time out. Team time out. Because this is a puzzle, I didn't even realize what was going on in the board. But we're training, we're learning, we know what the issue is. So that's okay. Classic sub battle mistake. But this won't be a mistake because the computer won't let you do it. But yes, it's bad. So we actually, the trick here, what we saw is a threat. If it's our turn to move, we're winning. So we have to decide, where do we move the king? Okay, cool. So we got king f2 and we got king d1. We also got rook check blocks, but that we're just giving away the piece that's going to checkmate. Yes, I'm just trying to make you guys feel better about the performances earlier. No, I missed it, and because when it's a tactic, I just look towards the area of the board that needs solving. So I was just totally blind to this. Anyway, because it's forced, right? So white to move. What do we pick between king d1 and king f2? Instinctively, king f2 looks a little safer because we're going towards the side where we have more cover, more pieces. King f2, and I don't see any follow-up checks. With king d1, there's queen f1 check, so we don't want to allow that. So let's move the king on over. The rook comes to pin it, and this still looks very tempting because if black takes, simplifying the position and getting to a better endgame.